anyone who's had a position of leadership in the military and probably a lot of organizations, you are not you are not indoctrinated to be a taker. You're indoctrinated to be a giver. You are not, you don't. I mean, even terms like servant leadership. You don't have anybody talking about recipient leadership. I mean, so it's just in there. It's in the ethos. It's kind of in the subtle wording of how we do things that, like, as a leader, you give. You don't take. You unburden people. You don't burden people. And I think at least for me, I can't speak for everyone, but I think there's something in there. Like when in training, have you ever heard, "Hey, you know what? It's good to unload on some people this thing that's troubling you. Hand it off to someone else and let them carry it." Like, are you serious? No one tells you to do that, but it's no one also tells you that people want to do that. Like, people want to receive, whatever they can to help you.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. This episode is sponsored by Arrowhead Leadership Consulting. What are your organization's biggest pain points right now? Low EQ leaders, weak managers, toxic culture, high turnover, low engagement, leader development lagging behind company growth, no company career path. Let us know if your organization needs leadership coaching, workshops, training, or keynotes. Visit arrowhead-leadership.com for more details. Arrowhead-leadership.com. EQ Gangsters. So I am here with one of my rock star classmates. He was an absolute stud in school, and has done the same thing, unsurprisingly, in his career, his professional career. So he's got an incredible background. Again, I'll let him go into details, but it has been so neat. And some of y'all saw an interview. Well, I haven't even interviewed her yet, but on LinkedIn, I did a post on my time with Angela Parker, another one of our classmates. But I'm having so much fun, Charlie, connecting with our classmates and just learning and hearing, and again, like you've shared when we talked on the phone the other day, man, your personal and professional journeys has been so fascinating. And I didn't know, obviously, again, so some of the stuff that hopefully we'll be able to dive into, some of the challenging things that you have been through, and kind of what your process was to navigate some of those tough personal things, and then how working through those affected you professionally. Anyway, we'll jump into that all in a little bit. Charlie, can you share your background? Kind of tell us a little about yourself.
Yes. First, I'm going to break a rule, and I'm going to say I didn't say it the other day when we talked. I have this vision of Noble Givens that I want to share first,
Oh
because this is
no.
part of my background, right? Of probably plebe year, freshman year, in the middle of hard training stuff. You were in battle dress uniform, the military fatigues, if we have non-military listeners, and the goofy rubber tactical eyewear, high and tight haircut. And just while everybody's suffering, you with a goofy poop eating grin on like, just talking about how awesome it is and encouraging people. Like, that's when I think of you, that's what I think of. Because I don't know that I ever saw you over the course of 4 years when you weren't smiling, encouraging others. So I think it's
Wow.
not surprising, and I think it's also fantastic that you're still in your own way encouraging people through, difficult parts of life. The difficulties are may have changed, but the fact that people need encouragement and support remains, and you're still doing it. So I think that's awesome. So
Man, thank you,
say
Charlie.
that first.
I
Sorry to
appreciate
use
that.
up your time on you, but I thought it was important.
Thank you.
You asked me a little bit about my background. So I am from a very small town in Northeast Georgia, and somehow ended up getting accepted to West Point. I was a football player. As my math teacher that I had for a couple of years in high school said, if you want to go to college, you better keep focusing on football because you're not smart enough to get in with your brain. So I worked really hard at football, worked hard at academics, somehow got into West Point. First person in my family to graduate from college. Um, really did not know what I was getting into, but I knew, hey, this is a good school that people can go to for free that want to be in the army. So that's where I went. Um, and like everybody we that goes to a service academy, we did a lot of the same things for 4 years. For me, a lot of it was trying not to flunk out. Um, even though I found myself, I'm very blessed to have done well at West Point. Still, when I talked to my mom the week before graduation, she said, "Is there a chance you can flunk out?" I'm like, "I don't think so at this point." Um, so that's just kind of the work hard mindset. Don't fail. Do all of that. Branched air defense. Married my high school sweetheart, Lee, who is a fantastic woman, and anyone who knows me knows she's the best thing about me. We got married right after graduation. Went to airborne school for honeymoon, and then off to Fort Bliss to be an air defender. And was stationed there. Was in a Patriot missile battery, and about 4 years in, had a career-ending injury. Sound like I'm a defensive back or something, but yeah, I had a career-ending injury in training, few orthopedic surgeries, bounced out very quickly and surprisingly out of the military, and found myself a civilian after a 10-day transition from the military. And what do you do when you are married, have your first child, and no one's employed? Suddenly, like, you move home and go back home. So that's what we did. Back to Northeast Georgia, and I taught AP history and coached football for a couple of years. And then I realized I was paying more to go to work than I was making the way things were structured because I wasn't a teacher. Basically a substitute teacher. I'm like, okay, I probably need to find a job, and ended up going into pharmaceutical sales for with Johnson and Johnson. Um, Something I never expected to do, but went to an interview, um, as a favor to one of our, another West Pointer who was a recruiter. Went to the interview as a favor, was not interested in the job, but I'm competitive and ended up getting it. And did that for a long time. And then My wife and I have started our own business, which we ran for a while and sold. And then, over the last 15 years or so, I've been various sales leadership positions, and most recently COO of another healthcare company. So I've been in mainly sales, business development, and in healthcare for most of my career.
Okay, great,
And that's
excellent.
where we are today. I've got two beautiful daughters who are grown. My wife and we had a very brief empty nester period before the birds came back home. And so we have just a fun family situation now. And, still here in Northeast Georgia, still rooting for the Bulldogs. And that's what we're doing.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you, Charlie, for sharing that and kind of breaking that down. The first question I want to ask you is what was that like? So the even though because we do have a percentage that are not military, don't have military backgrounds that listen to the podcast, and I think this first question is how you handled that that kind of early on transition of identity from hey successful successful experience at West Point, boom, launched into your military career very successfully, and then all of a sudden boom, injury, and literally on a dime you're having to pivot identity, a lot of emotions, I would imagine you're managing. Like, what was that experience like, and how did you process that to go to the next chapter?
Um, if I answered with one word, it would be poorly. Um, uh, in retrospect, it took me about 10 years to integrate into civilian life. It's interesting because, all in probably in the military 8 years. And, it took another 10 probably to really kind of transition to civilian life. Part of that may be the nature of how I ended my service because it was abrupt, unexpected, no transition planning whatsoever. Had no idea what I wanted to do for a living. And then, um, so there are a lot of questions about, like, all right, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, I thought I was supposed to be doing something else. It seemed like I was going to do something that had more meaning or significance than I'm doing today. Um, so there was part of that, but also with me and other people may have a similar experience. Um, I went from being, look, I'm not going to say I was a great athlete, but I was an athlete. I was running marathons. I was doing things like that. Had my whole life. That was a big part of who I was and kind of how I viewed myself. So I not only left the service, but I also, was given the prognosis that I would never run again, walk with a limp. I was kind of expected to probably lose my left leg, the lower part of my left leg. So I was dealing with that too. There's that. And there's also now I'm a dad and I'm like, am I going to be able to play with my kids when they get. So there's a lot like, thank goodness, I'm very, very grateful. It's not how anything worked out. I've been able to, have a pretty high level of function. Um, but that was difficult. I mean, I thought about it after talking to you the other day. My first job interview, my first real interview where I thought I was going to get a job was with a Fortune 500 company into their management development track. And I was turned down. Of course, this is a long time ago. They told me they didn't think I was physically able to do the job because it would require a lot of walking in a plant. And I'm like, holy crap, I've gone from being a whatever I did in the military, whatever I did as an athlete to I can't get a management job because I'm not physically able. It was really tough for me to deal with. And it probably took me about 10 years to one, turn off the intensity of military life, the vigilance of being deployed, things anyone who's been in the military in the last 20 years has had to deal with. Um, to also like, what the heck am I now? So it was tough. It took about 10 years and it took a lot of patience from my wife. She invested a lot in this relationship for a long time when she didn't get much back from it. But I'm forever grateful. And it just took a long time. And that's what some of our classmates and people I know that have, ended their time in service recently. I've told them, for whether they wanted to hear it or not, don't be surprised if it takes a little while. It's normal. I think my experience was somewhat normal, but it takes a while to go like, what is life really about now?
Yeah. So let me ask about that and kind of a little bit deeper dive. Charlie, is so 10 years, dude, that's no joke. And to your point, the reality is it took what it took, right? Some
Yeah.
people it's shorter, some people it's longer. Like for you, it was 10 years. What okay, what do you feel you did well in that processing? And what do you feel you could have done differently?
Okay. What I did well, I think the mindset of I've got to have an objective and I've just got to pursue it. Whether I feel like it or not, I've got to get up, I've got to grind, I've got to be, have that grit, that kind of determination. I think that's good. Without that, um, like you're gonna drift. So I think that's I always had something I wanted to accomplish, something to work toward. And I stayed disciplined in that regard. That was good. I think that's necessary. The part that was bad is I didn't talk to any of our classmates. I didn't talk to really anybody from the military for I mean it was like maybe 10 years. Like I just said, like I'm done. I'm out and I'm not in an area where there are a lot of other military graduates, military academy graduates. I'm in an industry where there aren't a lot, so I wasn't around a lot of veterans. And what I did poorly is I didn't talk to anybody about how I felt. There's a lot for me that I felt like in the military, I understood the currency. I understood what you pay for what you get, what it takes to achieve. And I felt like, it may have taken close to a decade in the civilian world to go, what is this even about? Like, I don't know the currency because a lot of the things that I felt like bought me achievement in the military don't necessarily in the civilian world. Looking back with a better lens now, yeah, there's just some nuance there, but I didn't talk to anybody about it. So a lot of the things I felt, have you ever heard it before that veterans tend to isolate sometimes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So
Absolutely.
that's bad. Don't do that. Don't recommend it. Makes everyone's lives harder. And I isolated, didn't talk to people, and also just kind of pretended like I was not having problems, because no one wants to be someone's problem. So, that just kind of delays the acclimation, it just makes it longer. So,
So, so I want to jump on one of those points. That's great. Those are great takeaways there on sustains and improves. The one I really want to jump on, what is it, Charlie? Because I 100% relate with. I mean, dude, even to this day, I do not like it. It's very uncomfortable for me to say, "Hey, Charlie, I need help." Like even today, right? It's still very hard to get to a place where it's like, crap, dude, I should be able to figure this out. What is my problem? Why can't I just whatever, fill in the blank, right? And so what do you think that is for so many of us that makes it difficult to ask for help?
I think it's for a lot of us. Yeah, and for me, it doesn't start with the military. Like for me, it started early because to be completely honest, West Point wasn't a lot different than growing up, in the military. Like, my dad was a veteran. He was a hard man, hardworking man, so like the discipline and hard work and all that. And I was like, that was an easy transition. Um, and I think when you know, so if that's your baseline, it's going to take more to undo it. But anyone who's had a position of leadership in the military and probably a lot of organizations, you are not you are not indoctrinated to be a taker. You're indoctrinated to be a giver. You are not, you don't. I mean, even terms like servant leadership. You don't have anybody talking about recipient leadership. I mean, so it's just in there. It's in the ethos. It's kind of in the subtle wording of how we do things that, like, as a leader, you give. You don't take. You unburden people. You don't burden people. And I think there's, at least for me, I can't speak for everyone, but I think there's something in there. Like when in training, have you ever heard, "Hey, you know what? It's good to unload on some people this thing that's troubling you. Hand it off to someone else and let them carry it." Like, are you serious? No one tells you to do that, but no one also tells you that people want to do that. Like people want to receive, whatever they can to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. It's almost like it's and it's funny you even the way you described it was interesting, and I don't know if you intended to, but you said our goal is not to burden people, it's to unburden people. Well, even that right there, for me, I love it. If it, dude, I would love, dude, it would mean so much to me if one day I get a phone call from Charlie saying, "Hey, Noble, dude, can you help me out? Like, I need some help." I'd be like, "Bro, are you kidding me? I would love to be able to add value to Charlie." Right. So for me, it would not be a burden if you reached out to me and said, "Hey, dude, can you help me out?" I'd be like, "Bro, what? Tell me what can I do for you?" Right. And so, but you're right. It's it's like for me, I have felt like I am being weak if I reach out to Charlie and ask Charlie for help in whatever fill in the blank, whatever my issue is, and that it's a form of weakness. But man, I tell you, it now it's like just having had to reach out a lot of times because of all my weaknesses or failures or whatever. It's like, man, I think it's a form of strength if to have
It
the
is.
intestinal fortitude to.
And it's a way of honoring other people also. Trusting people is honoring people, that's not, but again, everything I said, let me be really clear. I'm not saying was right. That is wrong. That was all wrong thinking that it takes I think it's easy to have those beliefs and it takes a while to unlearn them. For me, I just had to get to the point that I said the the things I believe, the way I'm operating is unsustainable. I've gotten here with it. It's gotten me this far. There are, probably some things I believe that are true about the world and people and everything else that may have been beneficial at whatever point they got me here, but it's not going to get me the rest of the way. I've got to rethink some things. And it caused me, I'm an introspective, nerdy person anyway, to sit down and just go, I need to list out what beliefs I have that are impacting my life and which ones are true, which ones maybe have been true but aren't true now, and which ones do I need to relearn. And it really took me going through that process of saying, this is something I believe that is not helping me anymore, and it's probably not true. So, what is the new truth I need to? But in one of those, like a very simple one, is you know, I believe my only role for my family is to protect and provide. That is my value. I mean, that is something that, however it got in my brain, it was in my brain. My role is to be a protector and a provider for my family. And then when you feel like you're not that, you go, do I have any value? And I had to really open up and go, like, that's not my only value here. That's not that's not what my family shows me. That's not, but their love isn't conditional. But so why do I allow myself to believe that and put all this pressure on myself that if I don't have a good job, I have no value. You know what I mean? It's having to rethink some of those things.
Okay, so dude, that's fire. How? Okay, so what that process that you just described there is a very very powerful process and tool that I talk about on a regular basis with a lot of my clients. I had to learn it. I did not like my being power is not Charlie's being power. So I had to learn it from a lot of books and reading and other people. That's not something that I learned on my own. How did you how did you get to the place where you said, okay, something is clearly not working? What led you to having this moment of really powerful, productive self-reflection to come up with the conclusions that you did? What got you there?
I think big life transitions are natural times to to have that opportunity because you get like so I was at a point where I was losing my job. Okay, job was going away, had to find a new one. Did not apparently have one. Like it was not apparent what I was going to do. That's always disturbing. Like, all right, what the heck? Um, my kids, one had already graduated from high school, one was about to graduate from high school. So then you start thinking, what does the future look like without, you spend, a lot of parents, you spend 20 years like with the focus on the children and what do you do, so that was changing. I was starting to have physical issues from a lifetime of physical abuse of my body. I needed another shoulder surgery I didn't want to have. I couldn't, a lot of things I physically couldn't do, not to mention my bum wheel. So I'm like, God, I'm down on this. And and then recognizing like 10 years of constant travel, my wife and I were not as connected as we had been. And the question there is like, are we going to be more or less in the future? What does that mean? And what if I don't get a job? Like, what if I don't find a good job? There's that anxiousness, that anxiety. Do I even what is it? So it's all I think these life circumstances that are everybody's going to go through some of these things. A lot of them converge at the same time for me and really cause me to think about, all right, what am I going to do? What am I going to believe? Like, what am I going to think? Um, One event that happened, I'll just be, transparent about this. I was walking with my wife one day when she said, "You know what? I don't feel safe around you." Yeah, this is someone I've been with for 30 years, right? Who says, obviously it wasn't just out of the blue, but it's like I don't feel safe, and I'm like, I've spent my whole life making sure you're safe. Since we were in high school, making sure no threat is going to come near you. No, and I've never raised my voice or like there's nothing to be physically afraid of. And it took a while to realize that she's like, I don't feel safe with my vulnerability. I'm not worried about a lion breaking into our house. I'm not worried about flood insurance. I'm worried about, do I feel safe, you know, with my feelings with you? Are you so hard and have your own issues that you can't, just take this in and be, because I have been told in the past that I have a certain resting level of intensity that could be off-putting. So
That's dude, that I totally appreciate your vulnerability and funny, not funny, dude. I mean it was year, maybe even been either it was either year 20 or 25. Year 20, I think, when my wife 100% said the same thing. Yeah, 100. So yeah, and I was like, same deal. Like, what? You don't feel sick? Like, dude, I am like Mr. Tactical Security guy. Like I'm all, and she's like, McFly, like you don't
don't
even
care.
you don't even understand what I'm even saying right now. I'm like,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
know.
but it was a shock to me, and I'm like, how could you say
Yeah,
you don't feel safe? Like you are safe. Like I've made sure you're safe. Our kids are safe. Like I do everything I can to make sure you're safe. Like I think about that. I was like, oh, I don't. I've just completely missed it. Like I
yeah.
completely missed it.
Right, right, right. Okay, so and at some point here, if possible, I'd like to jump into some of those lessons we talked about it earlier, right?
Sure.
So, but not quite yet. I still want to ask this question, Charlie. Have you always been like introspective and had great self-awareness, or was that something that you developed? And if so, how?
I don't know. That's a no. Here I am. I'm going to be introspective and go, oh, let me let me think about that for a minute. No, I think I've always been kind of an introspective, introverted. It's my natural tendencies to think on things and ponder. So I've always been that way. I think, um, like I said, I think our environment probably shapes us in some degree there. I grew up um, in what could be a pretty hard environment. So I think I'm someone who came up having to really think about what people's motives are and what their likely next actions are in order to like, have a reasonably safe and, comfortable place. I have great family and all, but I mean, there's just a lot going on that like if you want your life to be good and easy, you better pay attention to what's going on around you and know how to deal with it. And also kind of think about where you fit and, what's the best place to get through this. I mean, not to get into all but I think that people who grow up in an environment like that, you can have some scars, but you can also have some skills that can be helpful. Um, in learning to read people and situations. So I've always been pretty thoughtful about what's going on, what are people's motivations, where do I fit, I don't even know if I answered the right question though, well, but there's something.
No, that was great, and I agree with you. I mean, some of it, like you said, is your personality, right? As introverts are typically the thinkers and the reflectors and the internal processors, but also the volatility of one's upbringing or environment absolutely increases the can lead to an increased sensitivity and awareness to the world around you and how it works to minimize, you know, mild to severe disruptions in your environment.
Yeah.
Right. I had a bully when I was a little kid. I was man, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 10, maybe 9, 10 years old. And this guy, he was probably a young, maybe early teenager. And man, he would just terrorize me, chase me with a brick. And we had our school was like 100 kids in the whole school. So you knew everybody. And so, I think part of that was like, okay, I need to be situationally aware of my environment and how do I minimize exposure and contact and interaction with this guy because he was, it felt like 3 feet taller than me, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, to your point, that's great. That kind of increased your awareness. But now, okay, but even though you were, you have maybe a personality bent towards reflection and stuff, and upbringing, childhood environment sounds like contributed also to a lot of maybe evaluation and analysis and observation. But still, it sounds like it took a little bit of a hot minute in your life before you came up with, Charlie's 10 rules to live by, right? Like that happened a little bit later, if I remember correctly. That didn't happen earlier on in your life or career. It kind of happened a little bit later on in your life and career, right?
Oh,
Or no?
I didn't figure anything out about me until like for a long time. I mean, I feel like I started to
Oh,
understand other people and like kind of, but as far as understanding how to take care of myself, I think
ah,
emotionally, like it took a long time to figure that out. And that I am someone whose hobby has been psychology, social psychology, how people work, not as a layperson, like but it's just applying it to yourself. Like I said, I think a lot of us, at least I can say, definitely for me, there are core principles, beliefs about yourself, um, and the world around you that shape how we act, how we react, what we believe day to day. Um, and it takes some diving into those. It you're talking about in some cases bedrock beliefs, right? Like what so put on the hard hat if you want to get into that territory. But no one, you can read about other people, you can read about case studies, you can, but it's a very different thing when you're proposing digging into your own stuff.
okay. So what took you so long? Right? Like what for you, what do you think took you longer to discover yourself? I mean, it did for me, but I had no EQ for most of my life. So, but for you, what was it? Like what as a reflector and thinker, what took you so long to discover? Like what were some obstacles, or what do you think prevented you from that maybe internal or self-awareness journey?
Well, I mean, I picture like the nesting eggs, the Russian nesting eggs. Like you got, you the few on the outside you can crack open and look, and you still got a few eggs there, and it's pretty safe to do. I think when you get to the ones, you get to the small ones, those have a passcode that we may not even know to break into. Like we've got to really think about that. So there has to be, at least in my case, a compelling need. Like, all right, I need to do this. I've got to figure it out. And look, let's face it, everybody's busy. Like I can completely distract myself with work quite naturally and not have to deal with anything if I want to. So
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. So So can you, and whichever ones you're comfortable sharing, if you don't mind sharing whichever ones you're comfortable. So when you sat down and really kind of had that heart to heart with yourself, so to speak, and like, okay, what are my beliefs? Which ones are supporting me? Which ones are not supporting me? That whole journey, can you share some of those kind of life lessons or principles that you chewed on and spit out that were really pivotal or foundational for you going forward?
Yeah, I'm happy to if it helped, I may be the real oddball out there, but there's I'm happy to share anything just in the spirit of there may be someone else that can learn, I can help, through some kind of vicarious experience of making it easier for them. But I think the first thing is to realize, all right, what got me to where I was several years ago. All right, what got me there? Um, most of I'm going to read it because I have a list up on my other. Most of the success in my life has been fueled by negative emotions. I work incredibly hard because I think I have to be valuable. I work hard because I'm scared of failing. I don't rejoice in victories because I know how temporary they can be. That's probably like one of the fundamental things is go like what got me here? What got me, I was a successful high school student athlete through college. What made me successful in the military while I was in, it's I worked incredibly hard, and I worked incredibly hard because I was scared of not being good enough, scared of scared of failing. And that that adrenaline soaked energy can take you so far, but it's not meant to take you the entire journey, right? I mean, it's just not sustainable to do that. So I think that was one of the first things I just really think about what makes me work hard. What makes me work hard is not that I enjoy it, it's because I'm scared of failing. And if I fail, I don't have value.
Wow, that's and I will tell you, I've been in the EQ space now for probably 5 or 6 years, and very, very intensely and intentionally. And I've studied a lot of this stuff. Most people that are high achievers because of some sort of emotional dysfunction. So to your point, and that's fact. That's not noble. Like in my basement, that's my opinion. That's research. A lot of high achievers, the majority of high achievers, it's some sort of. For me, it was my raging, people pleasing addiction is why I learned what the rules are, what's going to get me the Scooby snacks and get my head pat. Let me be the best at that so I can get more Scooby snacks and head patting. Well, military is perfect. Okay, I just got to follow the rules really well and do a good job at that. And I'm going to get, promoted or whatever, get the top block or the little carrots that the military creates. But so for me, it was from my people pleasing addiction, not because like, hey, I'm this great guy and have these great values necessarily. It was a lot of it was due to my people pleasing addiction. So anyway, I appreciate that's great awareness. Now, okay, so this is here's a question for you, Charlie. What did you do with that? So now you sat down, you realize, okay, snap. Much of my success has and drive has been due to this negative emotional drive, if you will. Okay, so you discovered that, which is in my opinion, that's half the healing. That's half the journey right there. Now what? What do you do with
I
that?
think the next thing for me was to go, all right, what is this impacting? Right. So my next bullet point I made in my list of things to think about, I said, I've been a poor communicator. I allow my feelings to get hurt, then I withdraw. I don't tell people how I feel or what's bothering me. Instead, I let problems fester and resentment grow. I can solve this by being honest about things. So, I mean, the byproduct of I'm scared of failure, so I'm going to work myself to death is like if I fooled myself if I thought that was only an issue I was dealing with. I can't run 100 miles per hour fueled by anxiety and the people around me not get the fumes from that. You know what I mean? And part of the byproduct was I wasn't a good communicator because I couldn't say, I'm scared I'm going to fail. Like y'all are going to leave me if I don't provide you a good life. Yeah, I'm not going to say those things. I didn't say those things. So part of it was, all right, what do you do with that? All right, I've got to change my way of thinking. And I'm also in part of that, I'm going to change how I behave and how the people around me feel about it. So I'll give you an example. Again, I told you I was from a school that wasn't great in a really small town, Northeast Georgia. No one in my family had been to college. I had teachers that told me I wasn't very smart, and I got there and I believed I will get through West Point because no one will ever work harder than I had. I'm just going to work hard, 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 and ended up doing pretty well. And if you ask me, up until several years ago, why I was able, like, how did you do well there? You're not very smart. So you're probably right. And I just worked really, really hard. I would never allowed myself to say, hey, you know what? God blessed me with a brain that works pretty well. I may have worked hard, but you know what? I didn't do that. That wasn't all on me. Like, I probably could have worked less hard and probably still done okay. Like, you know what I mean? The world is not stitched together with my effort. It's not that important. So once I start to believe that, I'm able to say, maybe I can relax a little bit. Maybe I can take my hands off some things and they don't fall apart. Like, I never felt like I was important or anything, but still at the same time, you have this sense of my effort is required to, if I don't put my effort into these things, it's not going to be okay. Something bad's going to happen, and then when you go, well, that's not true. Well, maybe I can actually relax a little bit. Maybe I can give someone else credit. It's like a horrible humble brag to be like, oh, I've worked really hard. I'm not talented. I just work hard. Like, okay, well, first of all, it's probably dishonoring your creator with that kind of talk. And secondly, no one cares that you work. Everybody works hard. Like,
Wow, that's great. Okay, I want to pivot here because
sure.
this has been fire, Charlie. So many excellent, excellent lessons. I really, really appreciate the vulnerability because here's why I appreciate the vulnerability. I don't remember who told me this quote, but I've never forgot it. You can impress people with your mountaintops, or you can impact them with the valleys. And I've never been a COO of a big giant company and a big baller, but I've absolutely been in some valleys. So I can't relate with your mountaintop experiences necessarily, but I can absolutely relate with some of the valleys that you've been in, even if they look different, smell different, taste different, whatever. But anyway, so I appreciate because for me that's how I learn. I learn through the eyeballs of other people and experiences and stuff. Um, so I appreciate that. Kind of this last little section here, I really want to jump on your ability to develop leaders. How, because kind of again, our previous phone call a couple of days ago, you clearly, it sounds like to me, leader development is something that not only you enjoy, but that you are good at. One of the things you shared was, for the sake of the audience, a couple of Charlie's leaders that he had worked with and developed went on to become a CEO and a COO of different respective companies. Well, that doesn't happen by happenstance. You had something to do with their growth and development. What is your mindset or thought process in developing those around you?
Yeah, I think, there are a few thoughts on that. First one is this should be very basic, but you can't assume this is true. Hire people smarter than you. Like, that's if I'm going to be successful and I'm going to have a team, I want people better than me on the team. At least people who are better than me at certain things. So like I think I have my value. I've come to grips with there's some things I do well, but there are a lot of things I don't do well. I want people, if it's necessary, I want people much better than me. A lot of people are limited by a lack of security around people who may be more talented in areas. And I've never thought of myself as especially talented, as I already revealed. So it's never been a barrier to me. Like I want super smart, talented people, and if they're successful, I consider that my success. So if you're able to get rock stars, bring them on, keep them happy, and stay out of their way, guide them, let them soar. Perfect. Like that. That's one element of it. The second element of it is just to be intentional. I mean, I've always said, and I'll stick to this today. I want to be like a Nick Saban, although I don't like Alabama at all. Sorry. I have utmost respect for the way he has left his imprint all over college football because he's developed such great coaches, and you can't find a championship team that doesn't have one of his coaches on it. Like they're everywhere. So as far as a sales leader or an operations leader, I mean, if I could do that, if I could work with people and just have a lot of people who were able to find an opportunity to excel and I get them resources, that would make me so happy. So it's being intentional about it. The second thing, well, I guess I'm to the third bullet. The third bullet is really about um, I have a philosophy. I just four box with leaders and as much as possible. Like a lot of these things I'm saying, I don't do well today. There are things I want to do better, but I have, so just being real about how hypocritical some of this sounds. I think it's important for leaders to identify strengths they should be able to leverage. Okay, strengths that they just let lie because they're good enough. Weaknesses that need to be shored up, and weaknesses they don't worry about. So if you just pay attention to, I don't know, LinkedIn or someone's going to say, all right, if you're weak in these areas, here's how you get stronger. There are a lot of people who are weak in certain areas, but as they progress in leadership, they don't need to be strong in those areas. They don't need to be better. They just need to make sure they have people on their team who can fill those gaps if it's a gap that needs to be filled. Not every strength they have is something that they need to, sharpen to a point. Maybe there's um, a few critical areas where this is what's going to get you to the next position you want to be in. Focus on these areas, develop these. These others, you're good. Like you're probably good there. And then as far as weaknesses, again, it's like which ones are going to hold you back. Focus on those, shore those things up. You have other weaknesses, don't like I am not a financial whiz. Didn't go to business school. I am competent. I feel like I'm competent. I will never be a CFO. That's fine. Like I don't need to be. I'm not going to spend all my time there. There are guys straight out of business school that are so much better in Excel now. That like it makes me want to go. Like I'm not as good as I want to be. I should go. I should start taking classes. And I go. I don't. I don't need to spend my time there. I need to spend my time here where it's going to be more impactful. So just a couple of examples. I think that's one of the main things is like helping people see, if there's a level they want to get to, which skills are going to be important to get there? How do you demonstrate it? How do you get an opportunity? And which things do you just kind of get out of your visual range? Like don't look at these things. Don't worry about these. Focus here to really be successful. You got to have focus, and you can't focus on everything.
Love it, man. That's excellent. Excellent. Okay, another question, and I'm doing another little pivot here. Again, kind of based on our conversation the other day. Okay, you said at some point you discovered and jumped into the whole EQ world, emotional intelligence and optimizing behavior and psychology and that kind of thing. What led you there, and what was the impact of growing in that area?
Yeah, I think, if I start off and say at West Point, I majored in leadership, which sounds like, okay, you'll just read a bunch of historical books about Napoleon and Patton and other people, but it was a behavioral science. It was a science-based um, study and curriculum. Um, the things that interest me were, bases of power, sources of influence, group group and different dynamics, social influence. So all that stuff's always been interesting to me. So I've continued to read, and once the literature started, you know, bubbling up to where someone like me would see it, I started reading it, of course, and a lot of it made sense to me. So a lot of it made sense, and I also had lived through good emotional intelligence, either a culture or leader, where it was strong and also not, and seeing the impact of that. It also, made me think about, all right, where am I good? Where am I not? How can I be better? One of the things that, an EQ moment for me before it was called EQ, when I was at Johnson and Johnson, they did great sales training, great leader training. They videoed us constantly. And they gave brutal feedback constantly. And I had, after one of the leader development labs, I had another leader come in. Again, I'm pretty fresh out of the army. Came in and it's like, um, why are you mad? And I'm like, I'm not mad. What are you talking about? And they're like, you look so pissed off all the time. I was like, I'm not mad at all. This is like you got to dial that back a little bit. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm happy. I'm smiling. You're not smiling. Like, and I even do that with my daughters now. I'm like, I'm smiling, right? And they're like, no, that's not a smile. Like, because I just realized like I just have some kind of like I need to understand how people receive me, and if I was going to be good at sales, I needed to know that, and I needed to know how to if it wasn't effective, change it. Same thing's true with leadership. Different scenarios. Um, if I'm speaking in front of a group of people, like you don't want to look like you're mad, like So I had to actually physically practice the expressions on my face. Like that's embarrassing to admit, but I did. Hopefully, I'm better at it today. But like I mean, that's just that's one of those EQ things. Like, well, you're not going to get very far if people like you look like someone people don't want to talk to. Like, maybe good on a subway, probably not in a boardroom.
No, dude, there's nothing. I mean, that's excellent. That's not no. That's I really appreciate again your
Don't look like your DD 214 photo.
right. Yeah, right. Your army photo. That's right. No, because the dude, the nonverbals, people do not are not aware of how others perceive them, to your point. And yeah, and it's dude, it's fascinating the consequences of not being aware of that, and or not, so to your, to your point, there are consequences of yeah, of not knowing how you are being perceived by other people, and it can have real world, yeah, business bottom line consequences. Sales is a great, like you said, is a great example. For the family dynamic is another, again, great example to that. And teaching it. So that's one thing, is like for ourselves, but then, I love your next one there too, is like, you know, my daughter, her personality, we have a lot of very, strong. So I'm an influencer, majority 80, probably 80-20 influencer to dominant, using the disc model here, example here,
Mm.
influencer dominant. My wife is probably 55-45 dominant to conscientious DC, and my daughter's probably 70-30 conscientious to dominant, and she's a senior in high school. and both my wife and daughter are like very task oriented business, uh and so I like, look, man, you guys got to understand, like, when you come up on somebody, like, if your teeth are not showing, that's probably something you want to you want to start working on. Otherwise, like, your focus face is intense. You know what I mean? So, no, that's great, Charlie. The nonverbals, dude, are well, and nonverbals, you say 80. I've seen different things, but 80 to 90% of communication is nonverbal, right?
Well,
So,
and hey, a great thing in my leadership major at West Point, they made us do counseling classes. We had to counsel people. We had to videotape's great lesson, but actual real people, like these poor people. I mean, how they got, what they signed up for to have to deal with, inept people like me counseling. But it was so good, and we talked about body position, reflexive listen, all this good stuff that was really good. But nobody ever said, to me, like, yeah, but like, you may want to dial back, like your face. Like, if you've ever had someone tell you, as I have, like, I think the problem's your face. Like, I mean, that'll get your attention, but like, thank God someone will tell you that rather than like, hey, I'm leaning forward. I'm in an open posture, you know. But
right. Well, and something, so same deal. I had a couple of those counseling classes also, because I was a graduation major. I was management was
oh,
mine.
sister track there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so I had some of those counseling classes too. And one of the things, so I've, you know, over the years have developed sales teams all over the place. And one of the things that I would do is I would video them, right? And then video me too, so we could all have the experience. And then we'd all sit down and kind of watch it together, each of our respective videos. But then I would turn off the volume.
Oh gosh.
Totally different ball game. So now the only context is the nonverbal. So I'm like, okay, how are you coming across right now? How is that other person responding, right, with no words, only nonverbals? It's a very powerful exercise. Okay, last kind of question, Charlie. Well, I'm going to ask you, the last question will be, how do we connect with you and how do we find you and stuff? But before that, what okay, so COO of a company, and you've been very successful at that. So, and you develop leaders. What would be any parting, either personal or professional development tip for aspiring future C-suite leaders or executives or entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think um, to try to do that succinctly, I would say make sure you have an idea of where you want to land. Okay, so if you have a long term objective, work backwards. You know, but before you do that, before you map it out, you should really ask yourself, why do I want to do it? Like, I did not set out to be a COO. I kind of worked into in situations where I kind of pictured myself staying on the sales track more through life. But here we are, and I enjoy it, and I would like to keep doing it. Probably into the future. You should really ask yourself why you want to do it. And the first thing is, if it's to make money, there are probably better ways to make money. If it's so you have like profound influence and can, like, you may be disappointed with that too, because no matter what you do, you're always going to answer to somebody. Until you, I mean, until you build your electric car and satellite company, like, you're probably going to answer to somebody. What, so just like, make sure you know why you're getting into it. And make sure that you don't go this long journey and get there and realize, well, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Like, that's important. Like, what really matters to you? Again, like, I'm on the sustainability kick. Like, don't it's not sustainable to set on a 15-year journey to get here, and then if it's not really what you want to be doing. All right, but back from there, what I had to do. after my wife and I sold our business, and I'm like, all right, I need to get a real job again. Like I had the objective of I want to run a national sales and marketing program. So I said, if that's what I want to do, I'm going to have to start with, for me, I started as a regional director I wanted a VP, and I'm like, all right, the next step for me is I need to manage multiple states, have a region of different salespeople, different revenue streams across multiple states. Then, I need an opportunity to do it across multiple regions. So it's one thing to do it, in Florida and Georgia versus, all right, the Northeast and West Coast, or Mountain West. So like to be able to do all that. And then finally, I'm like, all right, I need an opportunity to, do it from the ground up, create a sales vertical with a CRM, sales structure, incentive plan. I want to build all of it. And then I was able to, work into that position. Um, that was about a 10-year journey of saying, like, I know the benchmarks I'm not ever going to get a national program until I can demonstrate these things. So I made sure I found opportunities to do those things. And then when you have the opportunity, you have to, make the most of it. But that's what I would say is like know where you want to be, talk to smart people, talk to people who have done it before and say, what do I have to demonstrate to get in a position to be able to do that? And people will tell you. I mean, for a lot of these, it's if you want to be a CFO, you're probably going to be a CAO. You're going to be a VP of finance. You're going to do work for a big four. You're going to do these things. So people can help you with the roadmap. But again, I would just say make sure the destination is where you want it to be. Like
That's awesome. That's great. And I would also, just to piggyback from your specific journey, is do that with both the technical side of whatever career path somebody has, but also what just is so awesome about your journey, Charlie, is you, you also had a tremendous intentional personal development journey as well. It wasn't just, hey, let me learn how to be a better SME of sales or operations. Like you had a tremendous parallel journey of internal growth and development as well, which I absolutely believe has a direct impact on the outcome of your professional journey. Right. So
well, I mean, to add to that, I don't know that I technically know how to do anything. So, I mean, other than hopefully, align people around work and, around a mission. And, I'm not an expert on anything that is money making, other than that, hopefully. So, yeah, if you get buried in the weeds of one aspect, I mean, hey, you're putting all your chips on one spot, right? So hopefully it's a good one. I mean, there are probably people that have done that in a lot of ways and done well, but there are a lot of other people that you know, didn't. So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
that's
think we're
great.
we're back to the age of the generalist in a lot of,
Right.
so just know what you want to do, know the path, and create. I mean, one thing too I didn't say is create a network of people that will help you and that you can help. That's what I did I was a lone wolf almost most of my time. I had a few mentors that were really influential and helped me, but I did not until LinkedIn came along start reconnecting with people that hopefully I can help and that have also helped me along the way, and that's a really important thing.
Love that. Love that. And I would even say also, that's brilliant. Intentionally develop your network or your tribe. I love that. And then also, like, man, practice sowing into others while pursuing mentorship, because it will make the pursuit of mentorship, in my opinion, have more traction when you are also attempting to become and sharpen your own mentorship sword by becoming a better mentor also, right? So man, I love that. That's excellent, Charlie. Intentionally develop your network That's great. That's great. I love it. Okay. How do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we connect with you? If somebody in the audience like, man, I'd love what Charlie shared, and I'd love to maybe even become a COO at one day, at one point. Like, how do we connect with you, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess LinkedIn is probably the best way. And I'm on there, Charlie Hall. Um, I'm COO of Resolute, so if there's a handful of Charlie Halls, I'll be easy to to differentiate. But yeah, happy to connect. I mean, that's one thing. Um, one thing I dislike about being extremely busy, at high operations tempos, I'm not able to give as much time to I have people I don't know that reach out to me that sometimes I'm not able to. And then a lot of times they're trying to sell me payroll processing. But happy to connect with people. And it's a something I enjoy is being able to network. I try to, especially with veterans who either looking for a career transition or transitioning from the military. But anyone else, I'm happy to connect and help, or help someone find someone that can give them better information than I can. So
Awesome, man, Charlie. Thank you so much, brother. Completely appreciate your how willing you were to just be vulnerable and open and transparent, and then also sharing. Man, some of the greatest lessons, in my opinion, are found and discovered in the foxhole, right? In that firefight, so to speak. And man, you shared some lessons, dude, that I'm really excited to kind of go back through and write down some of those questions that you asked yourself and some of those takeaways, some really insightful things, Charlie. I really appreciate your time, brother.
well, thank you. I can't, I was surprised. I had enough enough to say that would be interesting to be on a podcast, but I really appreciate what you do. Been following you on LinkedIn as for years now, ever since I saw you, and also the podcast. So really appreciate what you do for people, and I'm glad to support it.